Hello everyone. So yeah, I have a job, and that's Foxtel, and I've worked in record companies and record stores and all sorts of stuff in my life. But today I also actually teach digital marketing here at AIM, so it's good to see a lot of faces that I know. But today I wanted to talk about the consumer, or, that's a real sort of shitty marketing term, us. I want to talk about the music fan, because so much has changed for us and it's continuing to change. And if there's one thing that I feel very positive about in all the aspects that I work on, is that it's just getting better for us. And if we took a second to think about how it's better for us and how we can demand more things from the record companies, from the TV companies, the world will be better still. See if this works. So I wanted to start with this. Oh, look at Fred Neal's face. I don't know if you heard of this guy, Fred Neal. I heard of this guy in around '98, and I went and bought this double CD in a record store in Perth, the only record store in Australia that had it and wouldn't ship it to me. So I flew to Perth to pay $65 to buy this double CD. This is what the industry was like in '98. Obviously, they were about $30 really, but it was hard to find stuff, And then the next year, I found those same records on Napster. This is an obvious example of where we're going, that piracy came along and changed what we could demand as consumers. And suddenly you could access so much stuff. Who here used Napster? Hands up. Yeah. I have hundreds of Springsteen bootlegs because of it. And it changed everything, but that was my growing up. It wasn't necessarily, a sudden change. Things have been changing for us since music began, and to keep track of it really keeps us sharp about where the world is going tomorrow. Now, the reason that record cost $65 is because of this slide, and this slide comes from a great book about the comic book industry, but I think it very much applies to us in the music industry, which is, and any industry, TV industry, film industry, which is, it's very complicated. Everyone has to take their cut, the truck driver, person at EDC, a lot of people working here today, publicists, managers, all take their cut. And that's the only way it could be for a long time. And then the internet came along, and Napster came along, and various services we all know now. And the internet got rid of a lot of the middlemen. But it's not just that the artists got more powerful, which they have, and I'll let other people today talk about that stuff. We got more powerful as well. We can demand what we want better than ever before. I'll use an example of, I'm a child of the 90s and a nerd, so I really like Ben Folds 5. And for those who don't know, Ben Folds 5, the last record, they ran one of those pledge music campaigns, or a Kickstarter campaign. You might have heard different companies, Posable in Australia. And I did it. I paid $45 for a signed record and a t-shirt and all that sort of stuff. And in the vinyl version of this album, there is a big fold-out sheet of the smallest text you can possibly imagine, listing the names of everyone who gave money to this record. I have sat there for half an hour trying to find my name. I still haven't found it yet, but I know it's there. And it's great. Basically, this band, managed to get a new record out, one of my favorite bands growing up, because they could go directly to fans. They didn't have to go through their record company. They didn't have to play the traditional game. But also, from a fan's point of view, I got another record from one of my favorite bands. The other interesting thing about this record for me was it was on vinyl. We're at 2013 now, and we're still making vinyl, and vinyl is making a comeback. And I know, it's hipster cool and whatever, and a lot of people buy vinyl and don't even have a record player, but the fact of the matter is, because someone wanted it, they made it. We're dealing with more and more formats and more choice for us, because yes, it's harder. It might be a little bit harder to make money these days, but if you do what consumers want and what consumers demand, they will go and get it. There probably is a chance that I probably wouldn't have gotten this record if it was just a CD. I might have just bought the download, but I gave $45 and I got a record because that's my chosen physical artifact to take away. And vinyl's been around obviously for a long, long time, and it's interesting where we go as consumers and what we want. It's one of the things that we don't think about as well. I worked for record companies for 12 years, and it's one of those discussions we didn't have enough, which is where are the consumer base going? Because we can really learn a lot when we think about it through history. So if it started with vinyl, which was 45 minutes, really, it's about that big. It doesn't really fit in a plastic bag for those who try. Melts in the sun, sounded great. And then we get to these things. 60 minutes, a little bit less artwork, a little bit more robust, could carry them all around, you could listen to them in a car, and that was great. But we lost artwork, we lost a bit of sound fidelity, but it was more convenient, and we could own more, and it held more. And then the CD, I chose this because this is the very first album to ever come out on CD in Europe. The CD came along. And this was my era. The CD was supposed to be indestructible. I should have been able to, put it in a toaster and then it still played. It fit 74 minutes start, and again, we sort of had more convenience. It was digital now, and you can play it in computers and, it's just skipped on your Discman, whatever. But, again, we took a hit we went convenience over anything else. And you can own more, and it held more. And then this thing came along. Who still has an iPod? I'm just out of my own market research. You don't listen to iPhones? Yeah, okay. Yeah, battery life. I know, it sucks, right? Oh yeah, that's got to get better. I still have a 160 gig iPod. And again, what happened? We gave up a bit of artwork. We gave up a bit of sound quality. But I could have 160 gigabytes worth of music in my pocket. And you can't scratch an MP3, they don't melt in the sun, and you can't stick a pencil in an iPod to rewind it. So, but then again, back in 2000, I thought, this is the greatest. What else can they possibly invent? And then, not me personally, and then a friend of mine, I remember a few years ago, dropped his hard drive on the ground and lost everything. And I've had a couple of iPods die on me, had to start again. And so the next logical step after that, if you take away another bit of artwork and initially another bit of sound quality, but you go for convenience, being able to hold a lot more and own a lot more, streaming's the next logical thing that we come to. And yes, we're all music fans in here, and that might sound terrible to think, we might lose some of that artist's intention again. But majority wins. We've voted this way 4 or 5 times now. And it just makes sense that this is what we want, is to have access to as much music as possible and to not lose it. Oh. Because if we don't get it, we go somewhere else, don't we? And look, it's easy. I had to pick a slide to choose Pirate Bay, and it's fun to pick on Pirate Bay. But let's face it, this is not the only brand in town that does this, right? So why do people pirate? Easy is one. When I do my digital marketing class, I have a whole bunch of ones that I do, and if anyone can think of one that isn't covered in what I say, I will buy you a beer. But there are lots of reasons. It's not just that people don't want to pay. No one's going to pay $65 for that Fred Neal record anymore, especially not digitally. There's a difference between not wanting to pay and not wanting to pay so much. We still spend a lot of money on music, and we spend a lot of money on films and books and everything. I know a lot of people out there who spend money on VPN services to get around internet blocks so they can watch Netflix and Hulu and all that. And that money could be spent in going to artists and going to production teams. But we're spending the money in the wrong places. People like Pirate Bay and BitTorrent, they make a lot of money through advertising. I say this to my class a lot. There was a torrent site that was ad funded, but that money went back to the artist. What would that mean for the industry? The millions of dollars that Pirate Bay is making was pumped straight back into the artist community. That would change a lot of what we do, because that delivery system works. It's just we don't have the rights, and we're not going in that direction. But why do people pirate? Sometimes they can't get what they want. Fred Neal, my old mate from slide 1, that album only came out in Germany. It's not on iTunes now. It's not on Spotify now. It's not on Audio now. So it's the only way I can get it, especially when they're not making that CD anymore. So we're going to see a lot more examples when it comes to TV as well. It is a world where we have a choice that if the record companies and the film studios aren't doing their job, we have this other option. And it's really making them scared, or I guess us scared, because we're doing everything we can, us as in Foxtel and record companies I've worked on, because we're doing everything we can to try and counteract that. We have to be better than the pirates. And is that so difficult? One of the other things I wanted to talk about is our access to artists. This is, I mean, how cool does that band look, really? This is a Canadian band called Sloan. I came across this album when I was 17. I bought it, and this is the only photo of the band in the artwork. There's 4 singers in the band, and there's no credits, and I didn't even know who sang what song or who did what. There wasn't a website. There was no way of knowing who this was, and I love this record, and my whole image of this band was tied up in this one photograph. And as beautiful as that is, that doesn't exist anymore. Strange story, but the guy with the glasses on the very right, he actually was the music supervisor for a movie called Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And great movie, right? And so he plays that bass that they use in that movie. And I just thought, I wonder if that's Chris Murphy's actual bass. So I tweeted him, and he told me, no, they made a replica of it. This band that was such a mystery to me in '98, I'm talking to him on Twitter. So the barriers are really breaking down. You know, I'm not asking a publicist if I can possibly get an interview and do all these sort of things. You can really just get to people directly. And as someone who does a lot of training in digital marketing and does a lot of training with artists to if and how they should communicate through social media, they're instructed to talk to you back. So it's another wall that's coming down for us. And we can be the artist as well. This screenshot, for those who don't know it, is Gautier. Has anyone heard that song, somebody that you used to know? There were hundreds and hundreds of cover versions of that song, as you probably well know. There's probably someone in the room who's done one on YouTube, right? And Gautier himself decided that he was going to do a mashup video of all the versions that he can find. So if you go on Gautier's YouTube channel, you will find this video, which is hundreds of different YouTube covers of his song mashed together. But that's the thing, you can be the artist. People remixing your songs, people sampling your songs, people using it for all sorts of creativity is where the future's going to. Even the idea between an artist and the consumer is really breaking down. You know, I work for Channel V, and we do so many games and record companies of where, you know, remix the song, you know, come up with a video clip. We're asking you guys to create content for us. You guys are creating as much history as these bands are. It's a tied experience. And this was unheard of years before, and it's only getting stronger. I think this is the best recent example of this. And the thing for me to really take away from this is how they figured out this to happen. And for those who don't know, this is a promotional picture for Arrested Development Season 4. Hands up who's seen it. Yeah, okay. So a lot of pirates here. It's good. So Netflix for those who don't know, Netflix is a streaming service for video in the States. And you know, we're going to talk a lot about streaming today. And they have all this data about what their users watch. And Arrested Development, this show that was cancelled almost 10 years ago, is still one of their most watched TV shows. And so they decided to plonk up the money and bring it back. We all work in the music industry, or we all want to be in this industry, and we all know social media, and we all know the importance of Facebook likes and Twitter followers and YouTube hits. But we can bring something back without even using that, because we're just tracking data now on what consumers do. We can just tell Arrested Development is a big show, and that they bring it back, they're going to have a hit on their hands. The other big Netflix show was House of Cards. And Netflix market research basically said people like movies directed by David Fincher and movies starring Kevin Spacey. And so Netflix basically went to the two of them and just offered them a pot of money to create something together. And they did, and it was a success. You don't even need to like something on Facebook to have your vote anymore. Everything you do, when you click on something, when you watch something, is a vote. And then you can actively vote. For those who don't know, this show, Veronica Mars, was a pretty cool TV series in the US that got cancelled, and thanks to Kickstarter, they're bringing a movie of it. It raised millions of dollars, and they're going to bring it back as a movie. You might have also heard that Zach Braff from Scrubs has done the same thing, basically asking his fan base, and he's got a massive Twitter fan base, to help him fund his next movie. Not going to the studio system traditionally, not trying to get a script approved, not having a TV, a movie studio saying, well, you got to have a big star, or, we've got to have to save the edit, or, the age-old thing of you got to have a happy ending. He's got financial security, he's got the fan base to do it. We've seen this with Radiohead, we've seen this with a lot of artists, taking their career in their own hands, but also it only works when they have big audiences and when the consumers are there to support them. It also means bands never break up. This is one of my favourite bands of all time, The Replacements, who just announced that they're playing a couple of shows in the US. And this is a band that has sold, I would like to say less than 500 copies of certain albums in Australia, but they're big. We can tell that people still listen to them. They're still being listened to on RDO and Spotify. We can tell that their fan base is big on social media. We can tell that there's interest for them. And a promoter can be really smart and go, hey, we think this will be generating a lot of conversation and sell tickets to my festival. This is a band that hasn't played together since 1991. And bands never break up, and you wonder why bands never break up. It's like the Pixies, the Pavement, Faith No More. We can believe in these bands because even though they're not around, their audience is. So we can still track that. We still know what works. And if you are liking Facebook pages, it's probably the best way to bring your favorite band back. In the TV world, we're trying to do a lot of things as well. This is Doctor Who, I'm sure you know it. And the ABC did a very, very interesting thing when one of the season premieres, where they put the episode online on their ABC iView an hour after it aired in the UK. We talk about why people pirate, because they can't get what they want, because they don't want to pay, because it's a lot easier to torrent. When it's one click away for free, like in an hour after the UK, which is less time it takes to download a torrent of this show, how can you have, that's really trying to defeat piracy. That's something that Foxtel's really going for as well. With Game of Thrones and Mad Men, it airs on Foxtel an hour or two after the US, and then we play it again at 9:30 to, play the ratings game, but you can just set that to record and it's there when you get home, or you can watch it faster than you can get a torrent. It is actually able to beat the pirates at their own game. And we need to do that with music as well. I bring up this guy because one of my students told me a story. We were just talking about Leonard Cohen, and we're talking about, you just really got to hear this album. This is a fantastic album. And a couple of weeks later, I asked him, did he track down the album? He said, yeah, I found a torrent of the entire Leonard Cohen discography, so I just downloaded all that. And why wouldn't you? It's easy. If you were to hunt down the entire... Okay, take iTunes out of the picture. If you were to try and hunt down the entire Leonard Cohen discography in a store, you'd be running around Sydney for half a day. It's right there. So We have a lot to do with music as well to try and be better than the pirates, because we can. We're still not releasing albums day and date around the world. You know, we're still not releasing movies day and date around the world. TV shows lag behind. And when we sign people up to things, we offer them this music. It's right there at a click of their fingers. If you're a Spotify customer, it's right there. Or an audio customer, sorry Colin, you're right there. It's just easier than pirating. And that's what we're aiming for. I just wanted to end with this. There is a problem that we don't talk about when we come to all this, which is, it's great that I get to pay for some of my favourite bands to reform and go on Kickstarter. It's great that we have all this consumer power. It's great that we can talk to artists. It's great that we have access to things. But what happens if someone wants to kickstart a project that is against their fan base? What happens when Dylan wants to go electric? Is anyone, like, I mean, could you imagine that it was just a world where it was just that? Where there was no labels, and he expected to go straight to the people who love blowing in the wind and go, hey, give me money up front because I want to record Maggie's Farm. You know? We really haven't hit that point. You know, if Public Enemy, who did do a Kickstarter record, decided that they want to do, you know, a Backstreet Boys record, are their fans going to be there? Is that the end of their career? There is a gap there of the artists needing to set the scene, and that's the danger of consumer power, because we're all here because we love music, and artists, like Peter Garrett said before me, you know, they're making sense of the world for us, and we can get too powerful. Look, that's it from me. I just wanted to say that we can use what we do to make our lives better when it comes to getting what we want. Using the services that are great, you know, supporting things like ABC iView or Rdio or Spotify that gives us what we want. Helping bands get back together, liking bands that we like on Facebook, all that counts. We're all counting that in big data to bring back what we want. So we have more power than ever before, and we need to learn to use it better. Thank you very much.